rush to walk again. It was time for thought. He sheltered in a store doorway, feeling crafty, because he knew there was much mischief afoot. Chin in hand, he pondered the wind. Ah, now he knew. It came from the northwest. "Do you know what that means, Sam?" he said aloud. He answered his own question, the habit of a man who has spent too much time alone. "Sure do, Sam. It means you'll only be insane until the wind shifts." Pace nodded and smiled. He was happy that he'd gotten to the truth of the thing. Earlier in the day, the wind had blown from the south, and he'd been perfectly sane. But within the last hour, it had shifted. When it blew from the south again, he'd be his old rational self. William Shakespeare said he would. And old Will knew about such things, him being a famous playwright and all. I am but mad north-northwest. When the wind is southerly, I know a hawk from a handsaw. For some reason, Pace had always remembered that quote, since he'd heard an actor say it at a theater in Deadwood, and it tickled him. He said it aloud, then once again. But another thought silenced him. "Sam," he said aloud, his face puzzled. "When the wind was from the south, how come you were still crazy as a loon?" Pace shook his shaggy head. "Sam doesn't know," he said. He thought about it. "I reckon old Will Shakespeare has some explaining to do. That's what I think." The marshal stumbled into the street, and again got pummeled by wind and hammered by stinging sand. "Will Shakespeare!" he yelled, throwing his arms wide, his head back. "You know nothing! You don't know shit!" He laughed, an empty noise without humor. "Damn you! When the wind was from the south, I was still stark raving mad! And I didn't know a hawk from a handsaw." Pace looked beyond the edge of town, his eyes cunning again as they searched the darkness. Now he had a plan, a good plan. The graveyard was out there, hidden in the gloom. "Sam," he said, "the best thing you can do now is to talk to Jane and the baby. You can tell them about the south wind and how Shakespeare doesn't know nothing." Pace nodded. Yes, he'd do that. Jane would understand his madness and give him comfort. The cemetery had been laid out just 200 yards beyond the town limits. Because of flooding considerations, it lay atop a shallow rise at the base of a bare rock ridge shaped like the bow of a steamship. Once the place had been a sun-dappled, grassy spot. But now it was overrun with brush and cactus, and the site of the mass grave left a rectangular scar that would last for years. Pace had walked to the cemetery every day for the past 3 years and knew the way, his feet feeling out the path in inky, sand-torn darkness. The mass grave had no marker, but Pace found it easily, a tall wild oak guiding him to the spot. He knew the place well, and why not? He'd buried 83 people here. Him and Big John Andres, among them Pace's own wife and child, taken by the cholera. At the end, the last bodies he'd rolled into the pit had been those of John and his wife, Martha. Before then, the town had been known as Apache Creek. But when folks started dying, the mayor issued a decree that from henceforth it would bear the name Requiem. No one had disagreed with him, at least none of those who were still alive. Pace's hat had blown away in the storm, but he clasped his hands in front of him, bowed his head, and waited as always for Jane to talk first. The wind roughed up the oak, and Pace